So I think, Halldor, I'm going to give the floor to you. So now we can start the second part of our webinar, talking more about Horizon 2020 and the European Green Deal Co. It's going to be interesting to see all the different actions and areas that this call touches after the presentation of Mr. Parkour. So, Halldor?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Mr. Paco. This was excellent. It was really good to get the context for sort of the research calls that we're going to be discussing later today. I have to admit that I guess listening to Paco's presentation for the first time, it really hit me how important this Green Deal is. I really mean it. I was just looking at the graph that he had like really early on in his presentation, where it just showed, you know, like these different elements of our greenhouse emissions, how they're actually talking about getting it down to zero. And that is amazing. That's something that we all knew for a long time that needs to be done, but nobody has ever dared to actually say that how we're supposed to be doing this. And now the European Union is saying, here it is, this is what we want to do. And I'm just proud to be part of a generation that is like insist on solving these big issues that we're facing. And I have to say that I know that most of you here, you're only participating in this webinar because you are probably researchers doing some kind of research connected to climate change and so on. So you guys are actually the people who are gonna, you know, get us out of this challenge that we are right now. So I'm just like really happy to get this chance to be with you all here today and teach you about what the European Union is doing. And I just really want to say, jayo, like with what you guys are tackling. I know China is doing a lot as well and so on. We all need to work together on this one issue for sure, that's for sure. So my name is Halldor Berg. I am the country representative of EURAXESS in China alongside my colleague Anna Facchinetti, who has been moderating today's webinar. We are three in the team actually. Vanessa is also here. She's our Beijing partner, so to say. And if you guys have any questions in Chinese and so on, she's always very helpful and to facilitate everything and you know, translate and anything else. There's going to be a Q&A session after this, so we can maybe discuss this a little bit better. I have to say that we are not maybe the best experts to discuss like the calls and a lot of details, but you know, we have quite a bit of experience how to deal with this kind of calls. So if we don't know the answers, we might know how to find the answers at least. So let me just like start the presentation. Yeah, and again, I want to remind you guys, EURAXESS has like a network here in China. This is what we mainly do. We like kind of create a group of researchers in Europe and China, and we try to make them connect with each other. If you're not part of the network yet, you should definitely find a way to join us. It's for free. But if you just want to kind of join the conversation about the Green Deal, you should join us for the WeChat group that we just made. I think there's already more than 30 people in the group, but if you haven't yet, you can just scan the QR code. So we already talked a lot about the Green Deal already. The Green Deal is a huge political project that the European Union is tackling right now. And there are a lot of different things that need to be done, but one thing is for sure, we will definitely need some sort of a research element to it to make sure to enable what we are going to be, we're hoping to be able to achieve. So what we're going to be discussing in this presentation, sorry, I'm going to go here to the WeChat and just mute it. Here it keeps on. Okay, so the role of research and innovation when it comes to the European Green Deal. The research and innovation is going to be playing a central role, accelerating, also not this one, researching, like accelerating and navigating the necessary transitions, deploying and demonstrating and de-risking solutions, and also engaging citizens through social innovation. So how we're going to be doing this right now is that me and Anna are going to sort of together introduce a little bit how you can be part of this. The research and innovation framework of the European Union currently is called Horizon 2020. I'm going to explain a little bit how Horizon 2020 works. This Green Deal call, which is more than 1 billion euros, is under this framework call of Horizon 2020. So it's really good for you to first of all know how that works. Then Anna is going to go through the different sort of items of the call, because there's a lot of different call topics and items and aspects to it. And finally, we will also discuss a little bit how you can sort of join these sort of calls as a Chinese institution or European institution, etc. And that's what I'm gonna take the word again. So first of all, Horizon 2020. This is the EU Framework Program for Research and Innovation from 2014 to 2020. So you can see that we're actually in the last year of Horizon 2020. But it is still under this framework that this Green Deal call is being published. So you need to know how it works. Although this is actually the last big call that comes out of Horizon 2020. Horizon 2020 was more than 80 billion euros in total, which makes it one of the biggest, if not the biggest, research funding program in the whole world. And amongst other things, it funds collaborative research projects, really like tackles different industrial and societal challenges, puts a lot of millions of euros into certain topics, and normally there's like groups of institutions all over Europe and abroad that sort of try to research it and find solutions. It is open to Chinese institutions, and it's open to both public and private institutions. So the Horizon 2020 sort of covers the 28 European Union member states, but also the 16 associated countries of Europe. So, you know, when we talk about the member states, we're talking about countries like Germany and Poland and Spain and Italy, France. We're also talking about associated countries like, let's say, Norway or Switzerland or even Turkey and Israel, who are both associated to the European Research Area and Horizon 20, etc. And these funding is like sort of created to allow for collaboration between these countries and also allow for collaboration to countries outside of this area in some sort of way. The funding that's only happening in one country, this is not funded by Horizon 2020. That's not the idea. So Horizon 2020 is actually a very small part of like the whole research landscape of Europe. Every country, Germany and France and who not, also have a lot of their own research funding. But this is the funding that is there to sort of connect these countries into one European research area. So how do you apply for a collaborative research project in Horizon 2020? Well, first of all, there are calls, like the Green Deal calls that we're going to talk about today. The call is put out there. It will define what they're looking for. Then what you need is that you will need at least 3 teams from 3 different countries in Europe. So there needs to be at least 3 different countries in Europe. So it cannot be 1 country, it cannot be 2 countries, it needs to be at least 3 countries. It can be more than 1 from each country, but there need to be at least 3 different countries. And when I'm saying country, I mean European member state and associated country. So it needs to be somewhere from 3 different places. Most of the time it's a lot more. There are more people in these consortiums or groups that apply together. If you want to be successful, usually more institutions are more successful. And on top of that, we also allow for non-European countries to participate. For example, China. But that needs to be in addition to the 3 minimum countries. So this is another element. So China is actually participating in a lot of the Horizon 2020 calls so far. Just to make it a little bit more practical, I think talking about some examples can be good. If you don't know what the Quartz is, it is a database from the European Union where every funded project is sort of listed out in all the details. It used to be really difficult to find this information, but actually I have to say, the Quartz is really good. It is getting really, really good. So what I did in this case, for example, I said Horizon 2020, climate and environment was like sort of the field of research. And then I just tried to find something that had like Chinese participation, just to be able to show you how this sort of looks like. So there were a lot of examples. Here are 2. One is called the gold jelly, a gelatinous solution to plastic pollution. This is has 15 participants from 6 different EU member states. There's also 2 associated countries. And there's also a Chinese institution, the CAS Institute of Oceanic Studies is in there. And it's coordinated in Denmark. So the coordination institution is normally the one that sort of, let's say, initiates the application and so on. So let's say that you're a Chinese institution. In this case, you would basically, through this coordinating institution, put in the necessary part of the application to apply for the funding. So this is like really shortly how it looks like. But now I'm gonna get Anna to sort of take over and talk a little bit about the part of the Green Deal, sort of the calls themselves. You are still muted, Anna. Sorry.
Thank you, Halldor. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so you should be able to hear me and also to see my screen at this point. As you suggested, I'm going to go a little bit through the different areas that are touched by the European Green Deal call. And I would like to start with a question to our audience today. I would like to know if any of the participants of today's webinar is currently started an application for the call, or is participating to get more information because is about to start the application. So if this is the case, please send us a message with maybe the word apply in the chat box, so we know how many of you are currently apply. I'm just showing again the two QR code in case someone missed them for EURAXESS China and for the webinars chat. Okay, so send us this message, apply in the chat box if you're applying. And let me move to the next slide. Well, as also you already said, Halldor, innovation is at the heart of this European Green Deal call. Research and innovation are supposed to drive this transformation, and also in this current situation of coronavirus crisis that is creating stagnation. This is the European Green Deal is also meant to turn the green challenges that are established by the priorities that we have heard Mr. Paco describing to us into innovation opportunities. They are also going to drive European economic development into a more sustainable and into a way out of the current crisis. The key elements that will play, research and innovation will play, were already highlighted. So I'm going to go quickly to my next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. There we are, about the European Green Deal call. With this call, the European Commission has made available 1 billion euros. They are going to go to tackle the climate crisis, to protect health, biodiversity, and habitats under stress, and create and accelerate a sustainable recovery. This is the last and also the biggest call published under the framework program Horizon 2020. It also differs a bit from the previous published call of Horizon 2020 in several aspects. Given that it addresses very urgent challenges, it aims to reach medium and short-term results that are very clear, very tangible, but also with in mind the long-term perspective of a more sustainable change. Also, another element of difference is that the actions they are included in this call are fewer, so more limited number, but they are wider, more targeted, and yeah, in general larger, trying to push for a quick uptake and a wide dissemination of the results and the solutions proposed. The key dates to keep in mind: the call opened a few weeks ago on the 18th of October, so it's open at the moment, and the deadline is going to be the 26th of January. So there's still a few months to propose and to apply for this call for projects that are expected to start in 2020 in fall. So let's move to the areas of the call. There are 8 thematic areas that we're going to go through in the coming slides, which are some of the topics to explore a little bit deeper that we thought might be interesting of our audience today. And there are 2 horizontal areas. These horizontal areas are focusing on strengthening the knowledge, meaning the knowledge of services that are available to address the challenges of the EU Green Deal. And for example, again, the services and the products, they are there to support climate change and the mitigation of the climate. The second one, and the 10th in my slide, is about the empowerment of citizens. This means involving European citizens more in the deliberation and participating more in the European Green Deal, also allowing them to act on climate change and environmental protection. So I won't go through these 2 thematic areas later, but let's start on the thematic areas. The first one is about the climate ambition. I'll go through the calls here very quickly. One is about the prevention of extreme wildfires. There's one about innovative cities and climate resilience innovation packages in the different EU regions. The second main thematic area is related to energy, so clean, affordable, and secure energies. And here we see especially a focus of international collaborations with Africa. So also less developed nations and their needs are involved. Here we talk about renewable energy technologies, and this is a specific partnership. So let's move to the third area that I want to talk a little bit more extensively about. This call is about clean and circular economy, and the specific target here is on CO2 emissions and on, in general, industrial gas emissions. The challenge is to convert CO2 emissions that are created from industrial processes into synthetic fuels and chemicals, and to do this with processes that are green, that are based on renewable energies. This is because the EU believes that by doing this, it will be possible to reduce by over 30% the current CO2 emissions that we have, and they are produced by energy-intensive industry in Europe per year. However, to do this, it is necessary to demonstrate that this is feasible from an industrial and also an economic point of view, and demonstrate this by scaling up the technologies that have been developed so that they reach an industrial level and can be validated, and also validate their circularity. So this is the goal of the call on, and like this area. The scope of the proposed of the proposals that you might submit needs to aim at an increase of 50% of the efficiency in terms of CO2 emissions. We're talking about this compares to the current situation. They also need to prove that they are cost effectively when scaled up, and address a series of constraints that are very well described in the call in terms of environment, law enforcing, and and economic constraints, and also consider the socioeconomic impact. I'm going through these calls with short overviews, but you can find the link with all the specific details in the call in bracket you see on the top right of my slide here. The contribution from the EU for this area is considered adequate when up to 40 million euros, and normally the duration suggested when presenting a proposal will be to up to 5 years. Then let me move to the fourth area, that is about efficient buildings. We heard in the presentation of Mr. Paco that buildings accounts for 40% of energy consumptions in the EU. So making them research efficient is a great priority in the European Green Deal call. So we are talking here about this priority of designing and constructing either new buildings or retrofitting already existing buildings to make them zero emission, zero pollution, and transform them into positive energy houses. This implies two different phases. The first one is design and construction of buildings that have reduced emissions and they are more efficient from an energy point of view. The second one is the transition to these positive energy houses that are sustained by renewable energies. Positive energy buildings are those buildings that produce their own energy, they are able to meet their own cooling and heating needs and contribute to the stability energy grid. And these two concepts combined are aimed to bring to the creation of green neighborhoods with what are called the living laboratories. Living laboratories can be private houses, but also public places, schools, hospitals, and even commercial buildings can be the topic of the proposals. And they can have additional urban shared functionalities like shared EV charging facilities and things like that. So when presenting a proposals under thematic area number 4, you need to be sure that there are at least 2 demonstrations of this that are large scale and real life. They need to touch different aspects, not only the technologies, but also social innovation and these kind of aspects, and be applied in different regions of Europe. Again, the different aspects that needs to be met are going to be found in the specific call that you find also at the link on my slide. And finally, the objective of presenting and creating these demonstrations sites is that of testing in view of scaling up the solutions presented. This is again one of the 3 key areas that Halldor introduced in his first call. So one of the priorities scaling up and wide dissemination of the proposals. Contribution in this case is supposed to be between 10 and 20 millions, even if proposals also with different budget will be accepted and evaluated. Moving to another area, the one of mobility. Mr. Procwo as well talked for a while about the pollution that is created through mobility. This call is specifically targeting a reduction in greenhouse gases emission coming from aviation that accounts for 14% at the moment of the greenhouse gases emission in the EU, and from waterborne transports that accounts for 13%. So it builds up on best practices. They are already in place, ongoing projects, and also already planned activities. And presenting proposals for this area, you need to focus in one of the two focuses. So either focusing on green airports or on green ports. Here there are really many details and many requirements to meet to present your call. Talking about green airports, there are mainly 4 elements that needs to be involved: transport, terminal, energy, and cross-cutting aspects. In this case, again, demonstrations for green airports needs to be real life, large scales, and they have a very high technology readiness level, meaning from level 6 and above. Talking about green ports, again, the demonstration needs to meet the same requirements, and generally the focus is on proving that energy demand is met through the relying on renewable resources and renewable energies that are integrated in the green port or in the green airport. And some common elements that recall again the urgency of the priorities identified by the Green Deal, European Green Deal in general to be met, are the assessment of the expected improvement. So what are going to be the expected results in terms of greenhouse gases emission from the green port and the green airport. And finally, a characteristic of this specific call is that it's possible and actually suggested to apply through consortia, meaning that there will be a lighthouse, green airport or green port project. And I suggested that to create synergies, to leverage on collaborations for research work, for communication efforts, etc. It creates a consortium with a maximum of other 3 airports and ports. So this is a characteristic of this specific call. The contribution here is to be intended for every single applicant from 15 to 25 million, so not for the consortium. And as you can see, the duration from 48 and 60 months suggested. I'm going to quickly move to the 6th and the 7th areas. I won't go into details also because Mr. Poc already touched on them. And it's just interesting and to see the coherence and the systemic proposal of the same topics that you find in the European Green Deal and then in the relative call. So these areas are one on sustainable food, and the second one focuses on biodiversity and ecosystems. And I'm going to move to the last of the thematic areas that we're going to talk a little bit more about, and is related to the commitment of zero pollution that is implied in the European Green Deal, and especially with the aim of creating a toxic-free environment. So this is originates also from a survey from which the results show that a large majority of the population is worried about the impact on their health and on the environment from chemicals. Chemicals that are present in everyday's life products. So the challenge here is to address the risks that are posed by these chemicals to health, to environment, and also to natural resources. The scope is here to create new knowledge, to try to address the issue that is the issues that are created mostly by the lack of technical solutions in the production, in the consumptions of everyday products. The second element is that of exploring if it's feasible to apply these new solutions thanks to either new technologies or improved technologies to efficiently protect the health, environment, and natural resources. This is a project that doesn't focus only on technologies. It can and is suggested to include also business models or consider social innovation elements and even governance suggestions. For example, the demonstrations proposed needs to be applied also in relevant environment and in different environment in the different regions of the EU. It is suggested to use analytical methods and monitoring so that it's possible to monitor and finally with the final objective of eliminating the risks created by these chemicals and also grouping these chemicals so the structures with chemicals with the same structures can be tackled all together with a wider, stronger effect. And finally, the last point is about all through along like the whole proposals to always check and consult with potential end users. This again is because the solutions that are proposed needs to be effectively applicable, needs to be sustainable, needs to be cost effective. So it's going to be easily possible to uptake them and to disseminate them and have a wider effect. The contribution here is from 8 to 12 million. And as for the other calls, you find all the detailed information on the relative call and accessible also from my link. So this was my overview of the different areas that are included in the European Green Deal call. I hope it was interesting and not too technical, and the areas I chose were of interest to you today. Then I'm going to leave the floor to Halldor, that is going to explain a little bit more what's in it for Chinese entities and how can they participate.
Thank you, Anna. So Horizon 2020 is the framework program that all of these calls fall under. I can see already that there are questions in the chat box about how Horizon 2020 works and the application the application procedure, how it looks like. And it's actually always very, very standard and similar. Horizon 2020 calls look always the same, but I know that most of you are not very familiar. I already mentioned like the biggest confusing part earlier, which is that basically you're not going to be applying alone for anything here. You will have to join a group of a lot of institutions. That's going to be definitely the case. So the first thing as a Chinese institution, if you're interested in any of these calls, is to figure out who you're going to be working with in Europe. If you haven't figured that out yet, you're probably not going to be applying for this. But so like these calls normally end up with like the examples I showed earlier had like 15 and 20 participants, and maybe 1 or 2 of them are not from Europe. Horizon 2020 is open to non-European entities. That's just one of the characteristics of Horizon 2020. One of the things that I still need to make sure is very clear is that Horizon 2020 does not fund research that happens outside of Europe. That's just not how it works. Not like in the same way that the Chinese government is not funding research in Europe. It just not necessary, right? But it doesn't mean that we close off other institutions to be part of these research projects. Actually, it's very, very common for non-European countries to participate in Horizon 20 framework program. So for example, since Horizon 2020 framework program started, I counted 234 projects so far that has Chinese partners in it. So a lot of your colleagues around China, very prestigious Chinese institutions, saw a lot of value in participating in a lot of the calls that Horizon 2020 has offered before. And even in the field of climate change and environment, there's quite a bit of these. There, according to Quartus, there are 21 projects that have a Chinese institution that is inside of Horizon 2020 successful project. And I'm sure there's also a lot that were unsuccessful, but I'm just counting those that were successful. So you might be wondering, well, if we're not getting funded, why should we even be bothering with this? And and of course, the answer is because of the science, because of the research. The doors are open for you to kind of access these big research projects. If you have something good to offer, you might be able to add some value, and you can sort of allow a big project to become successful throughout by being part of that kind of effort. So Chinese institutions are certainly welcome to join a group of European institutions to apply for a Horizon 2020 call. That's how it always is. So if there's no funding, there is, of course, obviously the option of you just self-funding your participation, and at the same time accessing excellent research and contributing to very excellent research results. But there's also a co-funding available for Chinese institutions. So in China, actually, there is something called the EU-China co-funding mechanism. This is run by the Ministry of Science and Technology, mostly. Here in China, there's actually one other one, but this is the main one that you'll be looking at. This is run by the Chinese government, so the details is something that you would have to look for to them. But in principle, how it works is that the EU-based partners, they will get their funding from the European Union, but the China-based partners that are doing research based in China, they will get additional funding from the Chinese government to do the funding, do the research that happens in China. This is something that was agreed on in 2016. This mechanism exists. The Ministry of Science and Technology put in 200 million RMB towards this. We're getting towards the end of this co-funding mechanism. It was until the end of 2020, but it should probably include this one as well. How it works is that first you apply to be part of a Horizon 2020 project. If you are a successful project and you manage to be part of a group that gets the funding, you will then go to the Chinese government and say, hey, we are part of this amazing, huge project getting a lot of funding in Europe. Are you interested in funding this as well? And they have their own procedures. If you're interested in this, you should contact either the China Science Technology Exchange Center or SysTech, or simply the Ministry of Science and Technology here in China. And I'm sure that they will be willing to fill in the details. There's basically two different types of co-funding mechanism. One is like a flagship initiatives that were sort of negotiated between EU and China. This does not fall under that. These calls didn't exist at that time. But there's also another part of it, which are basically non-flagship initiatives. And there's still been examples of people successfully getting co-funded based on that sort of, participating in that sort of calls. For more details, go to the ministry here in China. This is their domain. But what is going to happen now? I mean, so actually the Green Deal is going to be the last call of Horizon 2020. And it's really kind of hurried in some ways because all of these call topics that Anna was discussing earlier, they have deadlines coming up very, very soon. So you have to act super quickly. The deadlines are in January or so, mid-January. So after that, what happens? Obviously, the Horizon 2020 is going to be finished, but I just wanted to sort of hint at what's coming after that. We have a new framework program for 2021 to 2027, which is going to be called Horizon Europe. This is still being sort of developed. We're getting really close to being announced. It's not out yet so much, but we know quite a bit what it's going to be inside of this new framework program. It will definitely continue to include a strong emphasis on climate and environment. And also the process I was describing earlier about how you apply to this collaborative research project, that's probably going to be very similar also. Like the structure of having at least three different European countries, etc., one coordinating partner, etc. All of that is probably going to be very similar. But as soon as the Horizon Europe will come out and be published, you will get to know the exact details. We don't know yet the finalized text of it, but we know that there are some missions that have been prepared, and those includes like 3 missions that really are focused on exactly the same things as the Green Deal. For example, adaptation to climate change, including societal transformation. There is a mission on healthy oceans. I know there are people here that are studying the oceans, sea and coastal and inland waters. And then there's also a whole mission on climate neutral smart cities. So this is like 3 out of the 5 big missions that they were discussing this summer. So I imagine a lot of you here today that are researching these topics are going to be very interested in seeing what comes out of Horizon Europe, because a lot of the calls in there are going to be focused on similar things. So you should look forward to seeing the first work programs coming out, probably early next year. And you'll see sort of how that's going to be. Chinese sort of partners will probably be able to participate in the same way as on Horizon 2020. The Chinese and the European Union are right now developing together a joint roadmap about how to continue their collaboration. And I guess the main sort of takeaway from that, as has been repeatedly said by the European Union, is that we want to work with China on research and science under very strong framework conditions. So these conditions are right now being discussed. Looking forward to see how that will end. Probably very soon we'll see sort of the results of that. And then the question is, now we have a framework for how to work with China. Now we have the Horizon Europe coming out. We will see a lot of new calls in 2021 for the coming years. How can you make sure that you're going to be aware of what's happening? How can you make sure that you'll know when these new updates are going to be on the table? Well, all I can recommend is basically for you as a researcher based here in China to join our EURAXESS China network. That kind of gets it back to the EURAXESS China. That's why we are here. We are basically trying to be your second brain when it comes to what's happening in Europe for researchers in China. So I know that you guys are very busy with what is happening here in China. You are following the calls that are happening on the China side, but you might be a little bit interested in knowing what's happening on the European side, but not always super aware when there's news about what's going on. But we in EURAXESS China, if you're part of our network, we will send you emails. We will update our WeChat channels. We will definitely make sure that all of this information is going to be there as soon as we know about it. So you will know it when we will know it. When Horizon Europe is going to come out, when the new joint roadmap is going to be there, all the members of EURAXESS China are going to know this. So if you're interested in developing a network of contacts in the Sino-European research community, joining our events, for example, and do other things like this, or if you're just interested in keeping track of the latest developments in Sino-European research, if you're also interested in finding out about like new funding and career opportunities, we're really good at that also. We have a lot of tools. We can be your partner and help you. And this is totally for free. So you don't become automatically a partner by scanning this QR code. This is only for our WeChat channel. But if you want to find our official account on WeChat, that's a good first step, right? So you can scan this QR code and find us on WeChat. we think here in China, that's a really great way to reach out to all of you. You can also find us online on our website, china.euraxess.org. But we're also on a lot of social media. We're like on Weibo and Facebook and whatnot. You can find us a lot of places, and on WeChat, like I said. But if you want to become a member of EURAXESS, just let us know. It's totally for free. So that is it for this presentation right now. Anna, I think it's time for questions and answering. Q&A.
Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. We're just like on time according to the schedule. So let's go through the questions that we received through the chat box.